Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar. We'll get started in just a moment. We'll let everyone log into the webinar this morning. And good morning again. We'll get started in just a moment. Thank you to everyone who's joining us. All right, good morning. My name is Garrett Sheehan. I'm President and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce and Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining our webinar this morning, Growing New Haven's Innovation Ecosystem. Before we get started, I want to once again thank all of our streaming partners, other chambers that we work with across the region, and then also all of our investors, in particular Connecticut Natural Gas, Southern Connecticut Gas, and UI, all part of the Avangrid family. And then our investors that support us throughout the year, our premier investors, and also our key investors and our principal investors. It's really been with their support that we've been able to put on our programming throughout the pandemic and continue to provide these webinars. We're excited about the presentation that we have for you this morning. We're talking about the New Haven Innovation Collaborative, and with us is Michael Harris, Executive Director. We have Oni Obi-Ocha, and Oni is the board chair, but he's also with the Sci Center for Innovative Thinking at Yale. And we'll also be joined by Winnie Yu. She's a professor of computer science at Southern Connecticut State University, and Al Bhatt, Executive Director for District Arts and Education. So we'll get started, and I want to start off with Michael and Oni. And first, thank you all for joining us. And I have to, at the front, say that the Chamber has been involved with the New Haven Innovation Collaborative. We've been very thankful to take part in some of the grant programs and add that to the programming that we do here at the Chamber, reaching out, meeting with businesses, working with university students to try to grow that economic development infrastructure. But Mike, maybe I'll start with you and talk about all of the programs, because it's a huge scope that Innovation Collaborative is involved in.
Yeah, thank you, Garrett. I'm very happy to be here and talk about the work that we're able to do. So the Innovation Collaborative has been around for 3 years now, previously under the name the Elm City Innovation Collaborative. And it came about as a collaborative team that was applying to a state grant that was created in 2016 through the Innovation Places program. And this is a grant that's administered by CT Next, which is a quasi-public state agency focused on building the entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystem in Connecticut statewide. And what had happened is that in 2016, right after GE moved their headquarters out of the state, the Connecticut state legislature, led by some of the Senate Democrats, crafted this bill called SB 1 that was directing state investment into the dense urban centers that are some of the things that are driving economic growth across the country. And so over an 8-month planning process, we put together a pitch. At the time I was working in the New Haven mayor's office, and those first package of projects have really grown over the last 3 years into stable and important pieces of New Haven ecosystem. And so over 3 years, we've been able to direct about $5.3 million of funding from CT Next Innovation Places into projects across New Haven. We've launched or have been able to help support the launch of 17 new programs in sectors that range from software companies to bioscience to food-based businesses to programs that are focused on talent and inclusive entrepreneurship. So there's quite a few of those. I encourage people to check out our website that has some more information. I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Our website is nhvinnovation.com. And what's particularly exciting right now is that we're launching, in the midst of COVID, a new brand, a new board, and a new process for the next step of what the Innovation Collaborative is going to be able to be. And so I'm very happy to be on this webinar and to be working very closely with Oni Obiocha, who's our new board chair, just starting this summer, who's going to be steering us through this next process. So it comes from a long series of work from our previous board that helped launch programs like the Ive Squared Innovation Center at our library downtown, programs like Collab that works with neighborhood entrepreneurs to have a cohort-based program to support their growth. Facilities like Make Haven, that's a membership-based makerspace to get people's hands on tools that might be too expensive for a team that's working on prototyping new inventions and designs. Some of the facilities that we've invested in for specialized testing have been able to support the growth of companies like Arvinis. And some of the talent programs that we have are really trying to take advantage of the future of computer science as an industry to unlock that economic potential of those careers for New Haven residents and provide high quality talent to fill the jobs that our local companies are needing that you're working with every day. So I want to turn it over briefly to Oni to talk a little bit about what the New Haven Innovation Collaborative is doing with this new launch and what's coming up in the year ahead for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael, so much, and Garrett and the Chamber for having us today. Really excited to talk about the work that we're doing and how we got here. So I think to Michael's point, one thing that we're really excited about moving forward is something we call looking at the infrastructure of opportunity. So really thinking about what are the opportunities and different ways that the city can come together to provide and really lower the barriers of entry for individuals to participate in the innovation entrepreneurship economy. So one thing we're really excited about at the New Haven Innovation Collaborative is thinking through what are the opportunities for us to deploy this funding in a way that we're thinking about jobs, in a way that we're being honest with ourselves about what good jobs look like, about how we can build diverse, equity, and inclusive ecosystem, an ecosystem where everyone can feel abundant and thrive, and how we can provide opportunities for people to navigate the systems in a clear way. I mean, one thing we was thinking about is how can we operate at a systems level so information is not only available, but accessible. That's looking at partnerships with the library, Ive Squared, which is an amazing job thinking through how they can be the front door to the innovation economy. Gina has been there, really from day one, thinking through those things. So always a good collaborative partner. Obviously there's people all over the city that we're always looking to for best practices and really bringing them on board. Another thing I'm really excited about that Mike alluded to is the new board. We have an amazing, diverse board, all of whom are very eager to participate, all of who come through a variety of different backgrounds, from Quinnipiac to CT Core, to Office of State New Haven Affairs. Richard and folks over there are doing some amazing work. So we're always thinking about how can we provide opportunities and how can we really deploy the amazing human financial capital that we have in this very diverse city, 120,000+ people. How can we give all of them the opportunity to provide and really maneuver through systems and institutions in a way that can make their life more beneficial? So that's kind of the high level thinking that as the board, we're really leaning on ourselves and most importantly, the people in New Haven to provide that feedback. We've been here for a little over 3 years and we're always thinking through what have we done well, what can we continue to do. Something we always talk about is start, stop, continue. So if there's any folks who want to give us that feedback or looking, saying, how can we be better in this work? We're always looking to have a listening ear. And with that, I would like to kick it back to Michael to talk about the other amazing panelists we have with us today.
Absolutely. So when I was talking with you, Garrett, about what some of our programs do, one of the most applicable things for a lot of the companies that you work with is this question of talent and getting quality talent that is meeting the needs of the changing workforce. And so the State Department of Labor estimates that there's going to be a substantial increase, almost 20% increase over the next 10 years in these jobs that require computer science skills, not just at software companies, but across all sorts of different industries as technology revolutionizes their operations. And so today we're joined by two of our project leads of programs that we've been able to support through the CT Next grant funding. And so The first is Dr. Winnie Yu, who's actually a former member of the Elm City Innovation Collaborative Board and helped us a lot with our advocacy there. Dr. Yu is a professor at Southern Connecticut State University in their computer science department and works every day with students that are going through the 4-year degree program that they have. In addition, in her spare time, runs programs for New Haven youth and middle school and high school students through a program that we've been able to sponsor that provides weekend boot camps and educational workshops for students to learn the basics of coding their own apps, of doing Arduino circuit board work, and some other introduction and excitement building programs. We're also joined today by Al Bott, who is the new executive director of the District Arts and Education Center, which runs both U of Next and the Holberton School, which is a new model for professional software development skills that really is an exciting take on what can a specialized program offer to provide workplace relevant skills. They train their students in a really interesting way that I would love for him to talk about in just a moment. But that's a new center over at District that's providing a 2-year program with accessible supports along the way for students to go from 0 to 60 of becoming a full stack software engineer. And so these 2 programs are 2 of the 4 or 5 that we've been able to support within the software space. And they represent in some ways both ends of some of the spectrum that we started out looking at. So at the top of the funnel, we do have a program that's working on combating the digital divide by putting computers into the homes of families that don't have them and providing basic computer education. That's a program called Concepts for Adaptive Learning. They're just about to open up their 3rd digital literacy center in New Haven this summer. We've been working with Winnie's program to have broader educational offerings in computer science for New Haven youth. And then one step above, for our first 2 years, we helped launch a new certificate program at Gateway that's the 6-month equivalent of getting somebody job ready in the types of computer science skills that are involved in a business analyst position. So that's data visualization, that's sales analysis, so that there are more people that have sort of the certificate level. And that program has graduated about 65 students so far. At the far end of the spectrum of the full professional skill set, the Holberton program is something that we're incredibly proud of and that has been churning through a whole number of cohorts with a fairly successful transition to online learning. So that's our overview of some of the things that we've been doing within computer science in New Haven, of trying to see as a model, how can our dollars from CT Next help to launch these new programs that find sustainability and continue to contribute to the New Haven ecosystem and give both pathways to better jobs and careers for New Haven residents, but also get talent for the companies that are looking to hire and would prefer to hire somebody from New Haven that they can support and give back to this local economy. So with that, I want to turn it over to Dr. Yu to talk a little bit about some of her program, and to Oni to help frame that with some questions.
Thank you so much, Michael. So Winnie, always a pleasure to be in conversation with you. How are you doing today?
Hi, how are you doing? I'm just fine. Hi, Oni, and everybody. So happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course, of course. So do you just want to start by giving a bit of a general overview about the program?
So this program, you know, like the great introduction by Michael and by yourself, started three years ago, and it started off as weekend coding events for middle school and high school students. And the main reason of why, you know, we came up with that idea is computer science, though, is very much in demand in industry and in the job place. Have not been, well, it's going to be, or have not been really a stable in school curriculum. So for many students, they may or may not have the opportunity to be exposed to that at the young age of, say, middle school years. And then they may not know what the field entails. Okay, they may not know whether they have the interest. So the idea is really to create a risk-free, fun-filled, okay, opportunity, okay, events on the weekends for them to actually get a flavor and just to be exposed to the fun world of computing or problem solving. So actually the last 2 rounds of events, we have also extended that to offer workshops for teachers as well. So this whole idea of enriching the computer science education, because we know that in the backdrop, due to the new law that was passed last summer, computer science will be included in our public school curriculum. So this is no longer just of interest that we speculate it's an important skill and essential skill in the workplace. Okay, it will have a very, I dare even to say, the revolutionary impact, okay, for our public school system as well. So my thoughts are, I would love to enrich this incoming pipeline, okay, to build this pathway for our young learners to consider that, to consider computing as the career of choice, and also working perhaps with Chamber of Commerce and all the local businesses and communities to enrich career development, job opportunities, internships, so forth, for our students here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I'm excited to learn more as we go. Al, how are you doing today?
I'm well. 6 months of using Zoom, and I'm fumbling unmuting myself. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Glad to have you as well. I know before this we were joking about how many titles you have, but I would love to start if you can tell us a bit more about your work at Holberton.
Sure. You should see the number of email accounts I have. Insane. So listen, I've got 2 kind of standard frame ups, and I apologize if you've heard this before from me, but 1980, if you started working, you were studying marketing, you were studying human resource management, you were studying biology, and somebody said to you, hey, listen, you really should consider minoring in finance. You likely would have said, why? I'm studying biology. I want to go work for Pfizer and build a 30-year career in R&D. And the reality is you should have taken a minor in finance, right? 40 years later, that's computer science. I don't care what your focus is. Computer science affects every discipline. So that's context for what we're up to here, District Arts and Education, vertical and horizontal. Vertical is what Michael spoke to, Holberton School. Deep dive, 2-year intensive computer science program. Not an alternative to higher education. It's a different path, right? The need is so vast. This is a path for a specific type of learner and a specific type of development. We mirror what it looks like in the workplace. We are highly accelerated, highly intense. And then we have a kind of payment model that's different. There's no tuition up front. We're a nonprofit. It's a pay it forward model. So students agree to an income share agreement. After they graduate, when they get a job, they pay 17% of their salary for 3.5 years. They're paying that forward to fund the next group of kids. And that cycle keeps going on and on and on. And then horizontal, computer science literacy for the masses. So we very rapidly have developed 4 programs that we're currently running, and we're going to run permanently. High school students, teachers, parents, citizens, small business owners, no cost. Actually, they're not going to be no cost. There's a problem with no cost. You do no cost, and 100 people sign up, and like 8 show up. So what we're going to do actually is shift that to low cost, but then your registration dollars are going to get donated to local, very small agencies. So that you have to kick in $20 so that you show up, but then the money's not going to go to us. Anyway, so those are anything from 1 week to 13-week programs that are designed to just build digital literacy across the spectrum.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much. And just staying here for a second, what are some of the highlights that you've seen throughout your time working with Holberton, or the work that you're doing with the district?
What's gotten reinforced for me is something that's been true my entire career and probably my whole life, is that the magic ingredient is community and relationship. One of the things that I think is exceptional about the district ecosystem in general, I get it, I'm biased, but still, it's authentic. One of the things that's unique about the district ecosystem and the Holberton experience is how much you can't hide from being in relationship and being in community. The design of the thing is, it's designed to foster and develop your ability to work with other human beings. You know, there's a paradox there. We work in computer science, but like everything else, ultimately, it's your ability to work, you know, for and with human beings that has the thing work. So, you know, one of the things I continue to learn is how critical that ingredient is here. What I continue to learn here in District and Holberton is how critical that ingredient is, how lacking it is out in the world, and how little it takes to introduce it in, and how much impact you can have if you really focus there.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you. Thank
Leonie,
you.
just wanted to throw in a question, and I know you touched upon this, that the collaborative is really focused on diversity. It has been from day one, and that's been an effort. But I think what's really incredible, and I've heard this, and maybe you guys can all touch upon this, is especially with computer science, software, there's a real opportunity to get out of a hierarchical structure, and we can really reach a lot more people who haven't been part of that pipeline before. Is that true? And I guess how is that operating for you guys, and where do you see that going?
I'm sorry, Garrett, who were you asking?
The entire world. No, it usually works best when I direct it to one person. So Al, why don't you start us off, and then everyone else can go.
Listen, so that's a license to give you my other contextual spiel about what I think we're up to. Where a city planner puts a bus stop determines who goes to work. When the highways got built, where they got built determined what cities thrived and what cities didn't. When the railroads got built in the 1800s, it determined what cities thrived and what cities didn't. In the 1800s, we built railroads and telegraph wires. In the 1900s, we built highways and bus stops. In the 21st century, we're building the digital infrastructure. And how that gets built determines the same things as the bus stops, the highways, and the right. So the issue, it's so much deeper, I think, for us and for the world than simply just access. That part is critical, right? And part of our model is designed, it's blind admissions process designed to take away some of the biases, unintentional, but biases nonetheless that seem to exist in the industry. We have far greater female representation, far greater minority representation by a factor of 2 to 3-fold. But beyond that, the education needs to include, and now does include, a very clear awareness of the fact that technology is not values neutral. And so therefore technologists cannot be value neutral. That every decision you make isn't just about a cool game or about a piece of software that enables some productivity, right? It has a consequence. And I keep telling these guys repeatedly, my job, our job is not to tell you what your values are. If we ever cross that line, you feel free to smack us, as it were. Our job though is to ensure that you're clarifying what your values are, right? And so we talk about diversity, inclusion, in accessibility, yes, yes, yes. But the real success on this stuff is not we go from 5% of computer scientists being persons of color to 35%. That's a leading indicator, absolutely. The marker of success is 15 to 20 years from now, 35% of CTOs are persons of color, women, et cetera, right? 35, 40% of boards of directors, et cetera, right? And that's not going to come simply with a focus on who do we hire, who do we bring into the pipeline. Those things are absolutely critical, but there's a bigger play there, which is awakening the kind of awareness in everybody about the social implications of technology. That was long. I apologize.
No, that's fine. Winnie or Ernie, anything you want to add there?
Winnie, I would love to hear from you.
Okay, so maybe I'll also say a few words. You may or may not know that Southern Connecticut State University, actually our institutional mission is on social justice. So that is, and that is, you know, a directive, you could say, okay, that is coming from our president, embraced by all components, all offices, all units in the university. And being a state university, we are very much into offering opportunities and access to all levels. I also want to describe some of the highlights of of what we offer in the university is the small class ratio. Okay, so we may or may not know, but our class size is typically in the teens. So students coming to us, and we are right here in your backyard, right? You know, you have the small class ratio, you have connection to your faculty, to many student support services. So in terms of also working out internships, helping students seek job opportunities, we are also right there, you know, helping students. So diversity is a very key component, both in the university as well as in our department. I also want to describe and share that our department, the Computer Science Department, is actually a very active member of NCWIT, National Center for Women in Information Technology, long name, NCWIT. And their goal, so this is a national organization, their goal is to involve women and improve and broaden female participation, and also, yeah, like what you described so well, that it's not just in terms of the degree headcount, in terms of participation, okay, is that we want to provide opportunities, train our young generation of learners, okay, into, you know, as leaders of various fields. So, you know, take a look at our program, and we have, you know, good things to offer, yes.
Yeah, Winnie, thank you so much. And kind of just to cap all that off, because I really like that the line of this conversation. I think as a collaborative as a whole, you know, we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we're really seeing how can we play a clearer role in embedding those values into our DNA of the organization, right? So I think to Winnie and Al's point, it's not only about, okay, how can we make sure that we're providing opportunities or even a conversation for this to happen, but it's also not being afraid to operationalize this work at a very high level, right? So even thinking about and you know, that's on us to do the work of seeing who's applying, how are we making sure that we're gonna turn over all the different areas we can to make sure a diverse set of people understand that these resources are available to them. You know, Michael's gonna do a great job of hosting info sessions to really walk people through the application process. I think there's so many kind of mental and emotional barriers for folks where they don't even think they can apply, where it's like, let's just get you in the pipeline. Even if you don't have the matching funds that are needed just yet, apply, let's have the conversation, and we really, really want to be here to help you in an authentic way. So again, the more that we can lower these barriers of entry and institutionalize and operationalize this process of getting more people on board to do this work, I think the better off we'll be as a city.
That's a great point. And maybe I'll direct this one towards Oni and Mike, just as far as there are so many programs that have gone on because of Elm City, New Haven Innovation Collaborative. Where do you see us getting to? Are you looking 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? What do all these programs start to have an impact, and what will New Haven look like because of the work that's been done?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Michael and I have a number of conversations about this. I would love to hear Michael's point of view first, and then I can chime in with whatever he probably won't miss anything, but whatever he misses.
Sure. You know, there's a lot of different visions for what New Haven's going to look like in 5 years. And there's a lot of different visions by sector, by perspective, by background. And I think that one of the things that we're hoping our board can be is a place where that conversation happens, but also not just entirely within the board, but also as a public conversation. I think that there's a lot of work that's being done by programs and by city leaders and by our institutional partners that are building towards their vision of what the future should be. But we don't often talk about what that looks like. And so I think that the vision that we have operated on is about finding ways that people who want to start companies in sectors like bioscience or software technology can find a good home to start that company here. They can find the talent they're looking for, they can find the networks and the investment they're looking for, but that their presence becomes a additive aspect to the efforts to increase economic well-being for New Haven's residents. And so most of our funding has gone to programs to try to broaden out the idea of who is an entrepreneur, who receives supports through entrepreneurship and innovation programs. What are the types of businesses or ideas or solutions, using a very tech term, that can meet neighborhood challenges that might not typically be considered technology solutions. And so this new board, having just launched this summer, is in the process of articulating that vision in conversation with itself, and I think hopefully in conversation with the rest of the city. But there needs to be this balance in which there are pathways for people who want to start new things, whether that's businesses or careers, where they have the support to do so in a way that revitalizes our neighborhoods as it drives employment. And so that conversation comes to a head at key moments when things like the new bio tower at 101 College Street come up. And the Board of Alders locally has a conversation about how are we investing in the workforce programs that are going to be there. We spent a lot of time talking with those developers about how can we create spaces for local entrepreneurs within that setting so that they're literally having classrooms and meeting spaces that are part of that network. But also, how can we simply empower the businesses that are launching through the pipelines that exist now? And so that sense of how can we broaden out entrepreneurship as an identity, as a pathway, is also very much linked to the distribution of access in our society. There's so many of these resources available at particular levels at universities that provide access to human networks, to capital, to celebration and featuring. And one of the largest untapped resources or potential in our city for economic growth are people that haven't had access to those resources or those programs so far. And so a lot of our funding has gone towards initiatives like the programs at I've Squared that are trying to take the types of programs that ONI runs at Yale and see what are the other types of ways that we can have these conversations, develop these skill sets outside of that formal setting and in more trusted, accessible community institutions.
One thing you said, Mike, and some of this you covered, but I think it's a great point. We're talking about 101 College Street. This is Carter Winstanley building that's going to be construction starting in the next few weeks here. It goes right next to the Alexion building. That's kind of the gold standard of innovation and technology. But if that's where innovation and technology in New Haven start and end, then it's a huge failure for the entire city. And so how do we connect what's happening there to the kid who's living in New Hallville or another part of New Haven or even in this region, that they can end up there and that innovation happens throughout the entire city?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that comes down to your definition of innovation. And that's something that we just recently had a board discussion on. And the idea that innovation is simply limited to patentable technologies does limit the breadth and scope of what transformative new business models or transformative new products can be. And perhaps one of the best examples of that is a podcast that I stumbled across just this last week that was on the history of paramedicine, like EMS services and ambulances. And it traced the invention of this entire field of medicine to a Black employment agency in Pittsburgh that literally set up this program because at the time, ambulances would pick people up and rush them to the hospital as fast as they could. And nobody literally sat in the back with the patient. They were both up front trying to drive quickly. And they wouldn't go into Black neighborhoods. And so both to solve the problem of healthcare access, but also to solve the problem of employment, they created this service that literally took the new inventions of CPR and literally created EMS paramedicine. And it was from a model that was set up to meet a local community need and has transformed our lives to the point that we just take it for granted that that's a service that's provided and provided well. And that happened in the 70s. And so there are ways that the innovations and what we consider innovation can really be broadened out because those types of new programs can be really transformative. But specifically within bioscience, which is clearly one of the sectors that New Haven has a globally competitive leading edge on. The discoveries in intellectual property coming out of Yale is fueled by $850 million a year of federal money. And that's made New Haven a magnet. We're now the third fastest growing city for venture capital investment in the country because private money is chasing the discoveries fueled by federal money. And bioscience is particularly challenging because it requires some fairly advanced degrees in order to do a lot of the key research. So one of our first programs that we launched was the BioPath at Southern, that was taking students who were getting a 4-year undergraduate degree in biology or chemistry or their new biotechnology degree that they created and providing them with the real world in-lab experience. And we did that through summer stipends where we were literally paying people to work in academic and private labs. We also helped buy professional equipment and put it in the classroom so that their students at Southern are getting hands-on equipment training that really undergraduates don't get in almost any other setting. And so that was our first answer for how do we try to get a clear pathway, this infrastructure of opportunity that Oni was talking about for residents to these jobs. And the first cohort of students just graduated this spring into an incredibly tough COVID job market. But that question of how do we make 4-year science degrees more competitive in this setting, because compared to the national scene, a lot of New Haven's bioscience is really focused on research and development. It has an incredible talent pool here doing that work. But those jobs are some of the highest skilled jobs within the bioscience industries compared to manufacturing or clinical trials. So I think that question that you're asking, how do we get somebody who doesn't yet have a 4-year degree on a pathway to get a job in the bioscience sector? And part of that is going to be fueled by the money that the Board of Alders set aside with New Haven Works as part of the 101 college building. But I think that's some of the conversations that we want to be having in the next 6 months.
Al, I know you had a comment you wanted to add in.
Yeah, I'm not sure who the totality of your audience here that's watching, so this might be a tad provocative, but what the heck.
It lives on forever on YouTube too, so. Perfect.
Listen, I have so many titles, as we've acknowledged, that I can always run the risk of getting fired for 1 or 2 of them because there's like 6 more that I can just stay in.
Go for
Michael
it.
Mentioned, yeah, Michael mentioned a moment ago. He asked the question, who is an entrepreneur? Pre-COVID, I'd agreed to do a program in one of the max security prisons in Connecticut. It was actually nothing to do with technology or any of that. It was actually a theater program, using theater as a way to develop leadership skills. A year-long program. COVID kind of sidelined that for a while. Back in conversations around a much larger prison to work initiative. In my experience, some of the most skilled entrepreneurs are drug dealers who never got exposure to other industries. There's an industry retraining program that we're talking about starting in this prison pipeline program, right? Everyone is an entrepreneur. Everyone lives their life as an entrepreneur to some degree or another. How you put infrastructure around that, how you build it as a craft, etc., not accessible to everybody. Some, like every discipline, some were really inclined to entrepreneurship. But absent the, how do I build a craft around entrepreneurship, and how do I get exposure to the types of industries that encourage entrepreneurship versus the kind of industries that exploit entrepreneurial behavior for destructive purposes, that's really critical for us to think about. Secondly, related, Michael asked, what is innovation? Um, you know, I personally am exhausted by the big man, big idea, big theory of the world, right? I have a friend, a colleague at Columbia, a guy who started. He's not a friend; he's a colleague. I don't want to oversell that. He started Columbia Hit Labs 30 years ago, a kind of pioneer in digital health field. I love his definition. He said, you know, an invention is something that's new. An innovation is something that's new that furthers humanity. That's his working definition for Hit Labs around the kind of things that they'll support as an innovation. Innovation is going on all around us in micro ways. Through COVID, my goodness, the amount of micro innovation of people taking care of each other through just creating new stuff. And, you know, again, so pairing that with the entrepreneurship conversation, right? Innovation is micro and impacts human beings, and entrepreneurship is accessible, is a human expression accessible to everyone. The convergence point of those two insights is an ongoing struggle to understand how do we properly fund, provide infrastructure for, et cetera, et cetera.
Good point. Oni, I think I started out asking a question to you, and then I jumped around a few times. So I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that conversation.
No, I think Michael hit some very good core points. I think one thing that I'm excited about with the New Haven Innovation Collaborative is thinking through how can we have a group of very diverse, very informed, very passionate people continue to attract resources to deploy New Haven. So really excited about what it means for us to be able to work with CT Next, with DCD, work with the state to be able to have this funding to deploy, you know, on a dollar-to-dollar match. And we're constantly saying, okay, what other tranches of funding can we go attract to be able to continue to deploy this in a way that's beneficial to everyone? So I think, you know, I don't want to be shy in saying we're constantly looking to attract financial capital, human capital in ways that can help support the chamber, help support the library, and just help support promoting the ecosystem in general. So if anyone wants to come communicate or get in touch with us, always happy to have that conversation. But I think the longevity of this program is very much based on looking to further provide value, attract resources, and provide value to people like your organization who are on the ground doing the work.
And maybe that's you know, what we should talk about now is that the application process is opening up. Winnie, maybe I'll turn to you and just ask for your story of how you first got involved and how that involvement has continued to grow and change as the programs have gone on, and really with a window to everyone who has an idea, thinks that they have something that might be able to improve New Haven and be part of this innovation ecosystem.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity. So how we got involved 3 years ago, okay, was I've been actually at Southern for over 30 years. Okay, it's this opportunity to do something within the city of New Haven that engage the local community, engage local students, engage local industry and businesses. Making that connection, I'm very committed and very passionate about. And I want to actually bring back something that Michael said a little bit earlier, of building innovation. Sometimes we don't have to start at a very high place, okay, but just collaboration, having that connection and conversation. I think good ideas will emerge when there is, you know, fill the field, they will come. So I think that is great. I love to see younger generation passionate about learning, and I think what can encourage more commitment in the field of computing is if we can have support of local businesses, local industries, local partners, local meaning within the city of New Haven, as well as statewide, right? Okay, when we know that, perhaps to encourage the conversation so that at Hobarton School, as well as at Southern, as well as other education institutions, that we are training the talents, the tech talents that's needed, okay, by our state, and that we are helping our citizens, you know, lead, you know, productive careers and productive lives. I think that's a very good incentive. And if we can achieve that, I think everybody gains.
And Michael, Al, let me go to you and then
I just want to put it,
yeah,
if you
go
don't
ahead.
mind, I want to put a quick tag on that, and I want to acknowledge something. You know, listen, we're kind of new kids on the block here. We've been here for a year and a half. The kind of work you guys are talking about, you know, that you opened up in this conversation, requires the time horizons, the commitment, the focus, and the kind of unglamorous, unappreciated dedication that folks like Winnie and her colleagues at Southern and many others around here, that's the game, right? I mean, you know, there's a lot of spotlight on the, you know, do a flashy thing for 6 months, and there's a lot of incentive to do that, but these kinds of issues, it's obvious, but I just wanted to kind of call it out, and I heard Winnie speak. I'm so respectful of folks who dig in on a problem for a long period of time, because that's what's required for an actual systemic change versus a PR hit.
Yeah, this is a marathon for sure. Michael, maybe talk us through the application process. How do people start to even access into the programs?
Absolutely. So we're really excited to have launched a new website along with this new board, nhvinnovation.com. And folks can go on that website and it walks through the application. Applications are due at the end of August for our upcoming round of funding. And this round of funding is really focused on responses to help businesses and careers weather the impact of COVID and recover well from it. So it's looking at these questions of sectors and innovation, but also a particular lens on new strategies. I think there's an amazing coincidence as well as difficulty in launching this new board in the midst of COVID, because you know, the 8 months that we spent on our strategic plan 4 years ago built towards an investment strategy that was in a setting where unemployment was at around 4% statewide. We were seeing record levels of venture capital investment. And now with the impact of COVID on New Haven's entertainment and dining and restaurant industries, the impact upon Black businesses and Hispanic businesses, 40% of which are closing nationwide. We're trying to see how we can develop proposals that we can help fund to help support business survival, help support career transitions that will make an impact in the short term. And so that application is due August 28th. It's about 19 questions, and we will be assembling that, reviewing it, and pitching it to the state at the end of September. So that funding would be available starting hopefully in November to hit the ground. We're also going to have an upcoming strategy-based process for developing the next round of applications, which will be due in January. And that will be a process throughout the fall and the winter, with some work groups meeting to develop these public strategies to, I think, go to your question of how do we articulate a vision of where we want to be as a city that spans different communities, interest groups, and organizations in a way that hopefully, and this is to Al's point of what is the long horizon multi-year goal, that we can set a shared vision that we can hold each other accountable to, and say, you know, how does an organization's behavior reflect that articulated vision of the New Haven economy that we're trying to build towards, and how does it contribute to solutions to systemic inequalities and racism, to empowering careers, to business growth and survival. And we're inviting all the members of the chamber, everyone listening to this webinar, to contribute both their ideas, their time and planning, their finances to an organization, or their human effort towards developing and implementing a proposal. You can learn more about that on the website, as well as submit your ideas. You can join our mailing list, and we will keep you apprised of the things that we have coming up this fall.
And I know Tamika just put the web address into the chat box, so if anyone needs that, and we just pulled that screen up a moment ago. We're coming up towards the end of our time, and maybe Oni, I'll give you the last word to kind of wrap all this up and a pitch for people to get involved.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And again, thank you all for joining us on the call. I would like to thank the Chamber for hosting us, and the sponsors for allowing the Chamber the resources to host this event. All in all, I think really we're here to try to do something special. Like Michael alluded to, it's a new year, it's a new board. We've learned a great deal with folks working with us to get up to this point, and I personally have learned a great deal. And considering the time that we're in now, I think it's incumbent upon us to come together and deploy, us as in the NHIC board, to come together and deploy these resources in the most honest, equitable, and value-driven way we can. And I will love to do that with all of you on this call and anyone in New Haven who's willing to work with us to get that done. I think Winnie and Al are amazing, and they're a subset of a larger group of amazing entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs and innovators that we get to work with every single day. And I know there's a Winnie and an Al in every neighborhood in New Haven, and they just need the resources to be successful. So we want to deploy those resources, and we're going to be unapologetic about being diverse about it, unapologetic about being transparent about it. And the more people who want to come connect with us, the more people we would love to have at the table.
Thanks, Oni. Great having you on, Al, Winnie, and Michael, too. It's been a great conversation. You can continue that conversation by going to the New Haven Innovation Collaborative website. You become a part of the process, even if you're not part of this next round. It's a long-term conversation, so it's not just a quick hit, as was said earlier. Great webinar, and we look forward to seeing everyone again next week on Thursday at this time. We're going to be talking about the reopening of K through 12 schools. Hope to have several of the local superintendents and talking about the issues that still exist and the plans for what school will look like coming into the fall. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.